Hey guys, this is Brent, and today we're going to be talking about John Deere Ztrak mowers. The Ztraks are John Deere's zero-turn mower. We're going to be talking about each individual family, starting with the Z3s, then going to the Z5s, the Z7s, and the Z9s, both gas and diesel. Hopefully after watching this video, you'll be able to decide which John Deere mower you need to be in, so stick with us here, and we'll get started. Alright guys, so in this video we're going to be talking about deck size and structure, frame size, we're going to touch on horsepower, and then give a brief overview at the end of what each family entails as far as options. So first, let's start with the Z3 and look at their sizes and deck structure. So in this model here on the Z3, we're displaying a 48-inch deck, but in the Z3 family you have a 42-inch deck, 48, or a 54-inch. Also, as we look at these decks, we can see that we have these rounded corners all the way around. These are going to be stamped decks. All of John Deere's decks are stamped. It means they're stamped out of a single sheet. On this model specifically is going to be 11 gauge steel. They are stamped. So a lot of other industry leaders in these mowers, they create or build these welded decks. Now, with welded decks come corners, and from those corners creates an area for debris to clump up. So when that clumps up, you create holding in moisture, and as we know, where there's a weld, there can possibly be rust, and from rust causes damage. So keep in mind that that is a very good feature on that stamped deck to allow that material to continuously flow. Now, I'll also point out on this deck, since it is stamped, they've created these lips here. That just adds extra protection for the front of that deck as you're mowing across that material to take the brunt of that force here. And then out here on our outside edges, we do have these weld mounts to create also that extra strength. As we know, on the sides, when we're running up against things, maybe we're mowing along that curb or along that wall, you have that extra built-in structure there to support that deck. As we move up here onto the 5, we'll talk a little bit about those. Once you go to the 5, the game changes a little bit. You no longer have that 42-inch deck. It's going to start at a 48, go to a 54, and up to a 60. Also within the 5 series, as you can see on this one, we have that same deck. We have the XL 48 deep deck, but also once you jump into the R model of this family, you can get into the high capacity decks. So it's going to be a different deck. That's an option that you have going into the 5. So still a stamped deck here, still that same structure along the front, still that weld mount on the side, and then once you go up into that deep high capacity deck, you have extra weld mounts on it, more structure, a deeper deck to allow more capacity for that material. So mowing over those thick yards, really creating more airflow to push out more material, being able to mow faster and just handle more debris and more things through that mower. From here, guys, let's go to the 7. Once we move up to the 7, we go into a high capacity pro deck. Now, as you can see, looking at these two side by side, there's a lot of difference here in structure. So we move to the front, we have full weld mounts on the front there. We have front scalping wheels right there in the middle of the deck that we don't have on the 5. This deck here is actually made of 9 gauge steel, so you're moving up into a heavier, more bulky deck to allow you to handle more material, rougher terrain, all those different things to give this mower more of that commercial feel. So the other thing that we'll point out here on the structure of this is that we do have this step here, and as you see, we have a 60 on this model. So talking about sizes, once again, we have 48, 54, and 60. Various options there depending on what your operation is. So 9 gauge steel, extra weld mounts to make it more commercialized, very much more bulky deck than say from this 11 gauge steel here. Now, as we move from the 7 to the 9, decks are going to look fairly similar. If you step back and look, you have those weld mounts on the front, anti-scalping wheels on the front, but as we look here on the side of the deck, you can see that it's a 7-iron commercial pro. So what this means is, moving up into the 9s, now you have a 7-iron deck, which is 7 gauge steel. So you went all the way from here, 11 gauge to 9 gauge, and now to 7 gauge. So as we go up and as we progress, we just get bulkier and heavier, built for those more commercial operations, for that high-end use. Sizes on the 9s, you're going to go from 48, 54, 60, and now up into 72. So now that we've stepped up into the 9 series family, we've gone up into our largest category, our category that is built for that highest use level. Now you've added in that 72-inch deck to create more deck width, to get that job done faster, to mow more at one time. So that is where we jump from the 7 to the 9, is going up in that deck size. So guys, from here, let's go talk a little bit about frame structure. Talking about frame, keep in mind, guys, that each family of these mowers has a specific purpose. Starting here with the Z3, this is considered John Deere's small residential mower. So as you can look here at the front, it does have the smaller frame. It's going to be skinnier overall. It's going to be skinnier at the rear, less bulky, and all of this serves a purpose. Maybe you're getting in that gate, you have that well manicured yard that maybe is soft. Maybe you live in an area that has a lot of moisture and your ground is soft at all times. Maybe you need to look into this Z3 with this smaller frame, being as it has the lighter weight. You have the option for that 42-inch deck for getting in and out of those gates. Just remember that all is application. So looking here, we'll move up and show you the difference between the 3 to the 5. So you have the welded tubular frame here on the 3, and as we move up to the 5, same thing, welded tubular frame, but as you can see, it's quite a bit bigger here. Skinnier here and skinnier here, both length and width there. And then as we move up to the 5, we get a little wider, little bulkier here. Now, like we talked about that application, this is going to be John Deere's mid-size residential mower. So maybe you're moving from that smaller in-town yard or that 1-acre yard to now we're moving up into that 1 to 2 acre yard. A little different. Maybe you're out there on the outskirts of town, a little more bumpy terrain, maybe not as well manicured yard, whatever that may be, ground that can handle the more weight. As we move up into this frame size, as we showed the difference there, you are adding more weight. More steel here, a little stouter, not going to be as much wiggle to give, for that various terrain. So just a little heavier, a little stouter. Just as we move up in that yard size and application, we move up in frame size. Next, if we go to this Z7, we can see once again we make that jump. The Z5, that welded tubular frame here, this size here and here. As we move up, now we're going here even larger to that Z7. The Z7 is meant to be kind of a crossover from the residential to the commercial side of things. So it's kind of a hybrid mix between the two. So now we're getting up into that larger frame to sort of mimic the Z9, getting up, we're wider here and wider on top to sort of mimic the Z9 without adding as much weight, being as we're still welded tube rather than cast iron. So here, maybe we're getting into, like I said, those commercial operations. We're going to be using this mower more substantially maybe than the Z5. We've got a larger yard. Maybe we're getting into that 3 to 4 acre yard size. Lots of terrain to cover. Getting into that 60-inch deck, that's high capacity for those different operations. More frame size adds up to carrying more weight. So once we've gone up into that 9-gauge steel deck, we need that heavier frame to accommodate for that. So from here, from the Z7 moving into the Z9, some of the things we'll point out is now you're going from welded tubular framing to cast iron framing. As we can see, we've got cast iron here on the frame going back, and also here on our caster wheels. Back over here, we still have that 9-gauge steel. So we're adding strength here. So we're adding into that frame for that extended use, as these are meant to be those mowers that are going to be mowing all day, all night, for those commercial guys that are constantly on these machines and moving. So we're adding strength there, but we've also gone, like we said, up to a 7-iron deck here. So 7-gauge steel on the Z9 means we need more frame strength to carry that. So now we've gone to these cast iron fronts, more strength, more durability, longer lasting life on the frame size. Guys, from here, let's go talk a little bit about the engines and horsepower. Starting here at the Z3, we'll point out one thing I want to go over, guys, is just the size of these engines and the fact that John Deere, being the company that it is, spends a lot of money in development and research. So keep in mind that these engines are designed specifically for each mower. So as we go up to each size of mower, you'll notice that there are differences and the engines get a little bit bigger. But one thing that you also might notice is that horsepowers may not correspond to what you think as to what size they should. That being an example, we'll start here. We've got a 22 horsepower Briggs & Stratton engine on these Z3s. Now, Briggs & Stratton is the only brand of engine that you will see on a Z3 family mower, but they may vary from 22 to 25 horsepower. But keep in mind, they are designed specifically for this Z3 family. And as we move up, over here to the Z5s, you now have that option for either a Briggs & Stratton or a Kawasaki. On this model here, we have the Kawasaki engine, and as we look here, it's a 24 horsepower Kawasaki. Now, that'll vary again depending on which model of Z5 we get into, whether it's Briggs, Kawasaki, and what horsepower it may be. But as you can tell from here to the Z3, a little bit bigger engine, a little different design, you know, and different components in each one of these engines based on application. So from here, we'll go from the Z5 to the Z7. Now, as you can definitely tell here on the Z7, a lot larger engine. You also have the option on the Z7 for this external air filter, giving more airflow to this engine from that added power. But one thing that I'd point out is we were on a 24 horsepower there on a Z5, and if we come around here to the side, we can see on this Z7 we're at 23.5 horsepower. Now, like we talked about before, this is a lot larger frame mower, a lot heavier deck, a lot of extra components to add that extra weight. So that's why I say, guys, don't get caught up on that horsepower as this engine, though might be smaller in horsepower than on the Z5, this engine was designed with those different components to add that extra power that this mower needs to get its job done. So from here, we have those different horsepower ranges and the Kawasaki engines here. Now, as we move up to the Z9, as we can see here on this one, a different engine configuration. Again, as we're moving up a little bit larger, here we're on a 25 horsepower, and this is going to be a Kohler engine. So in the Z9s, we have Kohlers, Kawasaki's, and if we go all the way to the diesel, now we have a Yanmar. So I'll touch a little bit on that too. On the Z994, it's going to be the first year in 2019 that we have that 25 horsepower, or 24.7 to be more specific, 25 horsepower diesel mower. So as you can see here, very large diesel engine. It is going to be liquid cooled. So you do have that full radiator screen and everything on the back here. Now, this is a new design on these diesel mowers. As before, all the screening was around the rear here, and we had problems with grass and things clumping onto that rear screen. John Deere has re-innovated that and moved it here back behind the seat to add for that extra airflow. But what I want you to get from this point, guys, is that as we've moved up from the Z3 all the way to the Z9, we've gotten bigger engine structures. We've gotten bigger as far as our framing around, and the horsepower has only varied slightly. We've gone from 22 on that end to 25 here. Now, you can go on up as far in these Z9s as far as to 37 horsepower. But as you can see, if we have a 25 here on the Z915 and a 24 on the Z5, there's so much additional weight here on the Z9 that only one extra horsepower is still moving that mower and allowing enough torque and tension to run that mower, to disperse that material, and to run at those speeds you need to run at. So like I said before, on the horsepower, don't get caught up on that. Make sure that when you're looking at these mowers that the engine is built and designed for that mower, and that maybe it's not just an engine that was brought off the shelf and thrown into that mower. Make sure and do your research and to see that these are quality engines in the mowers that you're looking at. From here, guys, let's get an overview and a recap of each one of these families and talk a little bit about the options that they entail. Let's talk a little bit about options within each family. I'm not going to touch over each individual option and what all they entail, but we're going to talk a little bit in a broader spectrum of the options within these mowers. So each mower, the 3s, 5s, or each family rather, the 3s, 5s, 7s, and 9s come in all three trim levels that John Deere offers, as in E's, M's, and R's. E's being the lower trim levels with not as many features, going all the way up to the R, which is going to be your loaded models with all those different features. So starting here at the 3s, some of the things I'd point out that's different between the R, which is what we're displaying here, other than the E's and M's. One thing that you get with the R is you get this extra added foot lift for the deck. You also get these rubber floor mats here to reduce that vibration, to reduce that fatigue throughout the day, and this extra curvature here in the handle here to adding this closer to your body or further away for that comfortability throughout the day. Just some of the things that you would get in that R that you wouldn't get maybe in that E or M model. Moving here to the 5, we're displaying an M. So this is going to have kind of the mid-spec of features. It's going to have one of the mid-level seat options. If you were to go up to that R, you get that higher seat back option, that thicker cushion here on the bottom. You get those little bit different hand levers for that extra curvature, and you would also get that foot lift when you were going up into that R model. As you can see with this M, it does not have those extra features, but this is all based on preference, guys. What's going to make you more comfortable? What price level do you want to be at? How long are you going to be on these mowers? What's going to make you most comfortable throughout that mowing experience? As we move here to this R, the biggest thing on the Z7s, the difference between the E, M's, and R's is going to be the transmissions and the seat. Now, on zero-turn mowers, you have two separate transmissions running each wheel, which is what each stick is going to do, is to allow you to run each of those transmissions independently. So on an E's, you're going to have a little lower grade transmissions, meaning less speed. You're also going to have not as high quality of a seat. You're not going to have this weight adjustment. And as you can see, onto the R, we do have this very high-end seat. It's going to be that weight suspension seat, so you can literally dial this seat to your weight to find what range that is, to help with that, you know, running over those rough terrains, really making a comfortable ride here. And then also you're going to have the highest end of transmission, allowing you to go up to speeds of 10 miles an hour in this mower. As we move on up to the 9s, you have, again, E, M's, and R's. As you can see here, this is going to be a Z915E. So some of the things that you'll have in difference on this model as opposed to an R, which we have over here. Front wheels, you're going to have pneumatic tires, so you are going to have to air those up. You do have that possibility of flats. As you go up into the M's and R's, you go to these semi-pneumatic tires, which are actually solid. They do not have a valve stem. There's only a core on the inside, about the size of a silver dollar. So you will not have flats on these. They will stay solid. Another difference here between these E's and R's, hand brake for your parking brake on the E. So we go to the R, you have an integrated foot style brake here that you'd unlock with your foot or depress to add in that locking brake. Also on the R, you're going to have the nicer seat here, again with the weight adjustment here, spring adjustment seat. On the E, you have your basic seat. You do not have that adjustment. Another thing that's big going from the E to the R's, and one that we don't have displayed here, but lifting the deck on an E is still going to be done by the foot, whereas on an R, and the diesel model is an exception in this instance, but on the R's you would generally have the hand raise here. You would have a button that would raise the deck, making it an electric lift. So that's a very short overview showing the difference between these E, M's, and R's, showing that you have various different options from all the way from the Z3 family up to the Z9. Keep in mind, guys, that all of this is based on application and preference. Whether you need that Z3 for that smaller in-town yard, less to mow there, you need the less weight, maybe that's an option for you. Or maybe you are that person that is out on the farm, you have a lot of area to mow, you need to get it done really fast, you need those large decks, you need to go up to that 72-inch deck. Maybe you're also on the farm and diesel is the fuel option that you have, and maybe we need to look into a Z9. All of those things and all of these options that we talked about for comfortability, deck raise and lower at the foot, different seat options, all things that you need to consider when looking at these mowers. As you may not know that through each one of these families you have those different options. So I hope that after seeing this today, you're a little bit more confident, and maybe it'll make you go out and ask a few more questions, be a little bit more confident in your buying experience. Hope you liked what you've seen today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. And today we're going to be talking about John Deere zero-turn mowers, and they're called Ztraks, and we're going to redo that. Dang it, dude. Get really excited about stuff I really know about.
I mean, I can't see.
Can't see the Z7 because I'm so big?
I can't see Z7 and Z9.
There's a Z9 right there. Stick with us here. We'll get started. I got really like saliva-y. That was weird. All right, so in this video, we're going to be talking about frame size and structure. Let's start over. Start with deck size and structure.
I'm cold.